Warning! Warning! This is a model train geek alert. You are preparing to watch the Quintopia 2012 N-Scale Model Review. It will be subjective, biased, selective. You may not like it. It will be Europe only. No Japanese trains, no UK trains, no USA trains, no HO. This is your last warning. Stop now. We will be shortly taking a look at the trains from Trix, Fleischmann, Catalog, Pico, Arnold, Majano, and others. Some of these trains aren't actually new. They're only painted to look new. So prepare yourself. Or stop now to avoid the 2012 Quintopia N-Scale Review. Thank you. Well, let's starting with the Trix catalog. Trix catalogs never seem to disappoint. Starting with the really great graphic design and frankly the stunning photographs they use to accompany the products that they're offering for sale. And what products they have this year? Well, something a bit unusual is around the corner. A 110 in a cartoon mouse livery. This seems to be a special cartoon character that Germans are aware of, I think. Then of course you got a V160 diesel starter set, kind of a traditional starter set, no DCC there, but you do get this really great photo. Is that a Walther's grain elevator in the background? Interesting. Of course, what I think is also neat is this lint start set. That's a great idea for a start set, very contemporary and cool, and I really like this photo, of course, of the lint in an urban background, urban scenery. This Class 482 SBB digital starter set comes with the Mobile Station 2 and lots of track. And of course you get another great photo of what is really, frankly, a compelling looking train set. Love those Alps. From the Bavarian olden days, Epic 1, or Era 1, you get these Class 4.4s, and you also get the same version, or at least a similar version in the DB variant, which I believe is a DB Class 92. And looking at this photo, it makes me want to be an Era 1 modeler, because that's just gorgeous. There's a special anniversary set for the Junkers aircraft, kind of neat, a little bit kitschy. There's a DB Class 50 with sound, and that's kind of cool, sound in DCC. Here's a nice photo of a 218, which you gotta love that. Yeah, love that, fantastic. And then there's a Nordwestbahn, I believe this is a lint as well. They call it a 648 here. Like the livery a lot, and the big windows, the modern scheme looks fantastic. Traditionally an SBB cargo diesel. This is a AM 842. And of course you can get some accompanying container cars with it. Those are really cool container cars. I don't know what it is about the Swiss, they just do it right. Something that really popped out at me when I first looked at these photos was this CAT, or CAT I suppose, train set, which is in Austria. It looks really great. The Taurus locomotive looks fantastic in that scheme. For France comes Minitrix's interpretation of a BB 61000, apparently not correct. I don't know the details, but I hear it's wrong. But a nice selection of rolling stock for your French railways and trains. I like that an awful lot, and it's very tempting. And of course, it wouldn't be complete without a broken nose, a BB 15000 in the En Voyage livery, and a BB 22000 in the Phantom livery. Quite cool and very interesting to me personally. Over at Fleischmann, their cover with a shot of an SBB Class 460 gives a little hint to the 125-year anniversary they appear to be celebrating, and the catalog has some photos of probably their history and other things about their early production. It's in German, so I can't tell you what it says. I do like the photos of the old toys and the old production they made, and there's one item in particular that if they'd produced it now, I certainly would have ordered it regardless of scale, and that's these old tin toys. Shown in a small photo on the early pages of the catalog. In terms of their traditional N-scale repertoire, they bring out a lot of the stuff they've had around for a while, I feel, not a whole lot new. The Class 1 Streamline DB steam locomotive you see there, awesome, I love it, great looking steam engine. The Class 145 electric and a special Fleischmann motif, great if you're a Fleischmann fan. I thought it was cool they did a Swedish locomotive. This isn't new, I've seen it in catalogs in days past, but nice to see it back. Of course, Fleischmann did create some new molding and casting of the 223 class diesels, here shown in some private liveries of Alex and Integro. I think that's how you say it. One of the cooler things that Fleischmann, I think, inherited from Rocco was the Class 601, available with full DCC and sound at a heftier price, of course, than a traditional version. And you also see a 1043 here for the OBB, Austrian Railways. A Class 190, an in-rail here is featured kind of in the last section. And then a Swedish RC6 and a little bit more contemporary paint scheme. So nice to see them branching out, getting some Swedish stuff in there, although certainly not new castings. It's good to see some differences from Fleischmann. Not quite as overwhelming to me personally as, or impressive as Minitrix, but keep going, guys. You'll get there. Well, compared to our friends at Fleischmann and Minitrix, Cato Lemke Hoppy train takes a little bit different approach and goes with a more bare bones, just get the information packed in the catalog approach. But boy, do they pack stuff in. There's just a lot on page 1, starting with this E426 EMU and a DB Regio livery. I'm not going to say a whole lot right here, so please forgive me. But you know what really gets me excited is this. This is pretty cool, this BRE71 or G514 electric. Looks like originally from the old Prussian Railway. Really neat looking, unusual I have to say. What I'm really excited about though is this, the Vectron Class 193 has been around for a while, but an SNCB HLE 18, that's fantastic. It's on my list, you can count that for sure. On the next page, the hits just keep on coming. Lots more interesting stuff here, particularly these G2000s. We've actually seen very similar locomotives from Majano in the past couple of years. I actually have one, and it's a great model. I'm a bit curious about what Hobby Train's doing here, if these are Majano models or not, or whatever. SNCF is actually a new version. Then, of course, we have this very interesting continuation of Hobby Train's investment in track maintenance vehicles. And then we have a TGV POS in the world record livery. If I'm not mistaken, though, I thought the world record livery would be on a double-decker coach, so it's shown here with single-deckers, so I'm confused about that. Something else which is interesting is they're featuring some Japanese models here. They have the E5 Shinkansen as well as an E3 1000 Tsubasa, which I have, and you can see my video in my video channel on YouTube if you're more curious about the E3. And of course we have the IC 2000 cars. They've already been released, but they're featured here. And then some HO stuff, which I won't talk about because this is not about HO. Arnold is a new company that was founded by a bunch of Flat Earth Society conspiracy theorists. Okay, they weren't really. Arnold is actually a very old brand. In fact, one of the original N-scale creating brands from the old days. But that's not what this is about. This is about Arnold's new catalog, which is, shall we say, a bit lacking on design, and certainly is more about being a product list than any sort of nice forum to show off your products. But what have they got for us? Well, let's see. They have a DB 627 diesel rail car and some DB Class 1s, because we know that there's not enough production made of DB Class 1s. Now, a little sarcasm aside, the Metronome 246 diesel along with the 285 diesels are kind of interesting and cool looking. The OBB 2050 is also an original model, and I think unique to any major manufacturer, and it's a good looking diesel locomotive and very intriguing to me personally. The 420 EMUs in the S-Bahn liveries, various S-Bahn liveries, are also kind of nice. A Class 152 electric in a Porsche livery is striking and cool. And they've also got some nice rolling stock, really ranging mostly for DB and Austrian Railways liveries. Some good looking stuff certainly, and at the right price they'd certainly be things I'd love to add to my fleet. Including these serial wagons, really nice grain wagons or grain cars, whatever the proper term is for them. They look really sharp. Of course, that's basically the 2012 catalog that I've seen. There's also this additional flyer, which features a V200. Of course, there's not enough of those, right? All right, sarcasm aside, CargoNet Class 119 electric is actually really cool. I like seeing the new livery of a CargoNet, which I believe is Swedish based, but I don't think they operate exclusively in Sweden. I think they come down Denmark and into Germany a little bit. That's kind of uncommon and cool, and I like it. Wish I could see more things that were uncommon and cool from Arnold, but that's all we get this year apparently. Pico! Our old friends from East Germany have a new catalog out with lots of interesting things. And one of the things about the Pico catalog is the PDF version is pretty much straight off the printing press, so I have to deal with the cover and the back page here for the front cover. But anyway, let's move into the interior where the good stuff is. First up is a Class 442 Talent 2 EMU, also available with sound. And also note it uses the new Plux 12 decoder, replacing the NEM 651 6-pin decoders we've been used to for several years, and hopefully this new decoder is an improvement. Note that in the Minitrix catalog, and I didn't call this out when I saw it, but the Minitrix catalog uses a different new version of a plug-and-play decoder, which is actually welcome news given the problems that the Minitrix interfaces have always had with the 6-pin plugs. Anyway, moving on. Minitrix also has a Pico also has a BR624 DMU, and I think a little bit more interesting and newer to look at is a BR646 or Class 646 GTW26 Flirt-like Stadler, and it comes in the Arriva, Viola, BLS, and DB liveries. They also have some new liveries of the G1200, particularly in HUSA, HUSA, and AX for Netherlands. And also, interestingly enough, nice to see a little bit of coverage for Luxembourg, a black version there for the CFL. They continue to bring out their line of BB66000 and BB26000 for the SNCF. New livery in Viola for the BB66000. BB25500 gets a little bit of a change, a little bit of a casting or mold change for the SNCF with a short cabin version, which I think is pretty interesting. That's cool and likely will be on one of my lists. And they also have a nice assortment of new coaches for the Alsace region of France, for the Terre Alsace coaches. Look good. And then a bewildering huge selection of SNCF coaches for a lot of different Terre lines and SNCF co-rail colors. And like I said, it really is bewildering. I don't know which ones to buy here because there's all these different colors, and I'm sure they all have different colors for a reason. So more research is needed on my end before I purchase any of these coaches. Of course, Pico has a selection of industrial buildings, and then finally in a flyer that came out separate from the catalog, they also have a GTW28, which is very similar to the GTW26 I already showed, but this one is in an SBB turbo scheme and is obviously a 2.8, which is a little bit different in design than the 2.6. And that's from Pico. And from the wonderful world of Barawe comes this Gravita 10 diesel locomotive. Kind of a cool looking modern version of kind of a typical diesel switching shunting locomotive. Kind of like the sleek angles on it. Very interesting. It also comes with a sound version, and actually that's kind of an interesting trend. A lot of the models in the catalogs this year feature a, obviously, DCC version with sound. Kind of cool. I also like these Barawe E77 locomotives, and boy, that E95, that is one tough looking electric locomotive. I would be very interested in that if that was the right era for what I'm doing. Of course, Barawe also has a series of V100s and Class 232 diesels from the Soviet Union. We're working in East Germany, now working all over Europe apparently with remotored Caterpillar engines. That's more history than I actually have any right to say, but I'll share it anyway. The little company from Slovenia, Majano, they're back. They have been in bankruptcy for the past several years, not unlike most of the manufacturers I've discussed so far, ironically enough. But they're back and they've got some cool looking stuff that I'm glad to see looks like is still being produced. In their hobby line, which means they're not going to be easily convertible to digital or DCC. You're going to have to use some soldering skills to get that thing converted to DCC because there's no interface or plug or anything like that. But I like the E44 electrics, I like the E424s, and as I already have two of the E424s, good to see them back out and being offered. In their Prestige line, they're continuing to offer the Blue Tigers, which are great looking diesels and have a distinctly American twist as their GE locomotives underneath that very un-American looking exterior, and they do have digital interfaces. Moving on to Pirata. Well, I'm not sure if that's the way you say it correctly, but that's certainly the way I read it, Pirata. They've really got one locomotive out, and they're a very small little manufacturer out of Italy, and they've got something called the Truman Diesel for the Italian railways. And this is a neat looking little center cab diesel again. I like it, and I would be compelled to go after something like this because it's certainly got a distinctive look to it. From Spain, from Maybar in Spain, comes this Renfe 597 class DMU, and it's got a really original looking control cab on the end, very colorful. I like them, they're very interesting looking. Of course, they have the ABJ1, as well as an 030 steam engine that looks really cool. Again, if you're an early era modeler, this is kind of a neat little locomotive, clearly for the Renfe, but looks nice. And of course the ABJ7, which is another great looking DMU. I guess it's not DMU, it's a diesel auto rail car, or rail car. And from Lilliput, who is obviously a part of the Bachmann Global Corporation, and who surprised, for me, one and for all, with their beautiful model of the Flirt this past year, is coming out with the Class E10. Not quite as audacious as the Flirt, but looks like a decent model. Interestingly, Bachmann is also going to require a new type of decoder for N-Scale. Again, that NEM 651 6-pin plug seems to be on its way out. Bachmann, or Lilliput, it seems to be going with something called the Next 18 decoder. So now we have the Next 18, the Plux 12, and the 14-something that Trix is using. And so that concludes the Quintopia 2012 preview of N-Scale of selected European brands. There's a couple of big themes that I saw with generally what I think are going on. It looks like most manufacturers are still generally conservative. We're all in still relatively tough economic times, and a lot of these manufacturers have just recovered from bankruptcy in some form or another. So not a whole lot of radically new things going on, but a couple of new interesting things that make it interesting. The new DCC standards I just talked about are interesting. The evolution away from the 6-pin NEM 651 plug will be a big change for those of us who are used to a very simple single standard for a long time. It's going to be a little bit harder to keep track of what decoder you need for which locomotive, which is kind of a bummer. I also think the other thing that was interesting is that a lot of the manufacturers are really making effort to not only add DC ready to run in their locomotives, but they're putting sound in them as well. That makes them a lot more expensive, and apparently there's a market for it. And it is kind of interesting, particularly when I think there's some locomotives that would sound really good with sound. It'll be a nice feature. Well, that concludes this video. I'd like to say that it's been a lot of fun. I hope you enjoyed it. And please feel free to subscribe, comment, visit my blog, and of course, thank you for watching. Until next time, this is Quintopia saying goodbye.